Ukraine's drone attack deep inside Russia on Sunday raises big questions. How will Russia respond, and what trajectory will the war take from here? After the biggest challenge to Russia's nuclear deterrence, President Putin has spoken of so-called super weapons, referring to a new class of unused advanced military systems. Will they be brought in? Well, the world is watching.
June 1. Ukrainian drones strike strategic bombers at 5 Russian air bases. Over 40 planes claim to be 34% of Russia's bombers destroyed, some capable of even carrying cruise missiles. Look beyond the battlefield to the repercussions, the impact, and wounded pride. All eyes are now on the potential blowback from the challenge to the Russian ego. Here are the 6 Russian super weapons that remain unused in the current war, but could redefine its course if deployed. Avangard is the hypersonic glide vehicle. The Burevestnik is a nuclear-powered cruise missile. The Zircon is a scramjet-powered hypersonic anti-ship missile. The Kinzhal is a hypersonic air-launched ballistic missile. The Poseidon is a nuclear-capable unmanned underwater drone. And the Sarmat super heavy MIRV-equipped intercontinental ballistic missile. Reports even suggest Russia might consider using its new hypersonic ballistic missile, the Oreshnik. The Oreshnik has been used in significant escalations in the past, like the attack on Dnipro. Expect the backlash to take dimensions outside the battlefield too, intense and a strong message to boot. In the form of a stepped-up cyber and information war, diplomatic channels may be leveraged to warn Western nations against supplying advanced weaponry to Ukraine. And there's the nuclear question. Actual use remains unlikely, but rhetoric will certainly be ramped up to signal the seriousness of its red lines. There's little doubt that NATO nations are bracing for Moscow's next move. The last few weeks have shown that talks held have been no deterrent to a military onslaught. More missiles and more messaging are likely round the corner. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Well, joining us live from Berlin, Germany is Ben Iris, was a founder and editor-in-chief of BNE IntelliNews and also former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. Mr. Iris, thank you very much for joining us at this hour. Let me just start by asking you, what should we look out for, or what should the world look out for after what happened in Siberia yesterday? Do you think there will be any counterattack by Russia? And if there will be any counterattack, how will Russia respond?
Well, of course, there's going to be a response. I mean, what happened here was new in so much as the Ukrainians snuck 6 trucks into Russia, inside Russia, and went deep into the heartland as far as Irkutsk, Lake Baikal. That's like more than 4,000 kilometers away from the border. And the Ukrainians don't have any weapons, any missiles that can reach that far. And moreover, they targeted these sitting ducks, these huge strategic bombers, sitting on the tarmac and destroyed like 40 of them. And these things, they were built, designed in the 60s, and they can't be replaced. They're out of production. And this is like, a main delivery system for Russia's missiles, the nuclear-capable ones, the cruise missiles as well. It's been using them regularly, and so this is very painful. And Russia's going to struggle to replace those planes anytime soon. But at the end of the day, they took out 40, as you say, about a third of the fleet. Russia still has plenty in reserve. And so it's going to be able to carry on firing these missiles with the other planes it has. And at the same time, it doesn't really degrade Russia's ability to carry out a nuclear attack, although these planes do carry those bombs. Altogether, Russia has 5,500 nuclear missiles that are multiple delivery systems distributed everywhere. The Iskander that's parked in Kaliningrad can still hit Ukraine and it has lots of options. So I think in practical terms, it doesn't really degrade Russia's military ability to continue to hurt Ukraine. But as you suggest, it's definitely going to be punished, because Ukraine is what it's done. It's an audacious attack deep inside Russia. And until now, the bulk of the fighting has been carried out on Ukrainian soil, with the exception of Kursk. But even then, the Allies were very reluctant to let Ukraine use its NATO-supplied missiles to hit targets inside Russia. So the Kremlin is going to be very angry, the people are going to be a bit shocked, and they're going to demand some sort of retribution.
Let's talk about the talks or the negotiations which just concluded in Istanbul. And we are receiving reports that Russia has proposed or had proposed 2 to 3 days of a ceasefire. But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that sanctions need to be increased to Russia. So what happens next?
Well, it's more of the same. The Kremlin has been playing for time. It's done these partial ceasefires, I think, to show and signal specifically to the Trump administration that it's not being, completely stuck in the mud about the possibility of a ceasefire, because Trump is extremely keen to see this war end. It's dragged out much longer than he would like. He was hoping to do it in his first 100 days. That deadline has passed, and we're still going. The Ukrainian side said at the end of the talks that Russia again outright refused to adopt the mooted 30-day ceasefire, unconditional ceasefire that Trump first suggested in March, which is what Zelensky's side is holding out for. And in the end, they've talked about doing a deal. The Ukrainians gave them a long list of captured and kidnapped children that they wanted returned. So I think at the end of the day, these talks are another fail, that no progress was really made. The Russians came with a long list, the Ukrainians came with an even longer list, and the ground between them remains extremely wide, because the Russians are not going to agree to a ceasefire until the conditions that Putin's put on his demands, that Lavrov was carrying, that deal with, quote unquote, the root causes of the war are addressed. And those are a long list of red lines. They include, like, no NATO for Ukraine ever. They include giving up sovereignty claims over Crimea and the 4 regions. They include Ukraine agreeing to demilitarize, reduce the size of its army. And Zelensky's going to accept none of that. And so they got this back and forth, because you have to remember the fighting season, the main fighting season in the summer is just beginning. That Russia is clearly preparing for a major offensive. And I think bottom line is that Putin believes that he's got the momentum on the battlefield, and that we saw this huge barrage of drone attacks and missile attacks on Ukraine last weekend that were effective. The problem with the Ukrainian drone attacks is they can only carry about 50 kilos of explosives, so they can blow up a plane, but they can't do any real damage to things like an oil refinery. They've got the big 3,000 kilogram bombs, these glide bombs, that do massive damage. And they're just going to grind the Ukrainians down until they capitulate or agree to these conditions. I think that's the Russian game plan.
Mr. Ben Aris, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for talking to us today. We'll have to leave it there.
Pleasure.